Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka Mono Bluetron, back again with another episode of 10-minute testing. So today's deck is TRICKSTAR Burn, and it's the result of several hours of grueling attempts to make a cool, unique build of a deck that honestly just pretty much plays itself. What I ended up with is a tight, consistent, and fun burn deck that's even budget if you squint your eyes until Pot of Desires looks like Pot of Generosity. So, let's jump into deck edit and see what we've got cooking. So, here's the list. Now, you'll notice that we're only playing 7 monsters, but don't worry, I guarantee we will draw every one of them every single game. As always, I'll be giving you a little bit of a rundown about what the archetype is, a little bit of what I hope the deck can do, and as always, the card by card. So first, for those of you who don't know, TRICKSTARs are the Academy's Nova, a group of the most promising vocal stars that... Wait, what am I reading? Is there a TRICKSTAR anime? Seriously, Google TRICKSTAR. The first result is not Yu-Gi-Oh! Okay, here's the Yu-Gi-Oh! One. TRICKSTARs are a group of monsters based on Japanese idols. Huh. Somehow that got more creepy. Anyway, they're showing up in Kotada, and as of now, there's only 4 monsters in one trap, and one of those monsters is a Link monster, so it can't be played on YGO Pro, at least not for a little while yet. Thankfully, 3 monsters is all we need, and honestly, we could make do with 1. The deck revolves around some pretty sweet synergies between TRICKSTAR, licorice? I hope I'm saying that right, and a bunch of otherwise pretty useless traps. By repeatedly forcing our opponent to draw a new hand and inflicting 200 points of damage for each card they draw, we can burn them out from surprisingly high life totals. Additionally, the incidental burn we're likely to get just because our opponents are playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In the year 2017 and adding 45 cards to their hand every turn, it's not negligible. Hopefully we can draw into one of our 3 sets of mediocre card destruction-esque traps, get burning, and steal some games. The rest of the deck is either very powerful draw spells, very powerful tutors, very powerful stun traps that synergize immensely well with the deck, or combo pieces. So with that, let's get into the cards. First, we have 3 copies of TRICKSTAR Candina. This card searches a TRICKSTAR card when she's normal summoned, which can get Reincarnation, Light Stage, or licorice. She also deals 200 points of damage whenever your opponent casts a spell card, which the astute among you will recognize that, that's really all that people do nowadays. Next is the best card in the deck, 3 copies of TRICKSTAR Licorice, the gem herself. She can bounce a TRICKSTAR you control to the hand in order to special summon herself, and she deals 200 points of damage whenever a card is added to your opponent's hand. This includes drawing. Hilariously, her bounce effect is worded so that you can get any number from your hand out onto the field for just 1 bounce total. In the games, we will routinely have a Candina on our side of the field, 3 copies of Licorice in hand, and bounce them all. Hilarious. Anyway, after that is 1 Lilybell, a fun of mostly, but it's kind of laughably easy to special summon this card, and it can attack directly for, effectively 1,000 damage if you have the light stage out. It's, good at closing games. After that, we have 3 copies of Terraforming, which find a really important card, 3 copies of Light Stage. This card does everything you could possibly imagine. It searches a TRICKSTAR monster on activation, and that's not once per turn, so these Terraformings are not dead. And it Zing-Zen Hues set cards, which means it's easier for us to get in chip damage with cards like Lilybell and, attacking Licoricicas. Additionally, every time we deal damage with a TRICKSTAR monster, it deals an additional 200 damage. It's incredible. Next copy is 3 Dualities. That is, pretty standard. Technically, we can miss a little bit of damage as long as we get to special summon in our opponent's draw step, which is probably good enough. 2 copies of Desires to keep the budget players away. 3 copies of Dark Room of Nightmare, which procs individually off of both the TRICKSTARs and the stage, meaning we're doing 600 every time an effect does damage to our opponent's life points. 2 Contract with Dawn 1000, an easy way to draw a card. You get to play with pretty perfect information, and you also get your opponent to take a cool 1,000 damage. After that are our traps. We have 3 copies of TRICKSTAR Reincarnation. This one banishes your opponent's entire hand and then immediately refills it, and it can be banished from your graveyard to special summon a TRICKSTAR if you need it. Next is Disturbance Strategy, which shuffles their hand back into the deck before they draw an additional hand of the exact same number of cards. And finally, Present Card, which makes your opponent discard their hand and draw 5 cards. This one's very important because routinely your opponent will win the coin flip, go first, and play their entire hand. Cards like Disturbance Strategy aren't very good when they're only drawing your opponent 1 card. After that are our stun traps. We have 3 copies of, Jesus, this card is going to be so good, Recall. When your opponent activates a monster effect, they draw a card, you negate the monster effect activation and destroy it. This does damage to our opponent's life points, it stuns them, prevents them from killing us, and, you know, it's just all around perfect for the deck. Next is Grand Horn of Heaven. It negates a special summon, destroys the monster that's special summoned, and allows your opponent to draw, making them take an additional several thousand points of damage. We have one Dark Bribe, another card with a similar effect. It negates a spell or trap card. We're only playing one as opposed to the 3 copies of Recall and the 2 copies of Grand Horn, just because its utility is kind of limited. Finally, we have 2 copies of DD Dynamite. Because we're playing 3 copies of Trickstar Reincarnation and it's searchable off of so many cards in our deck, we routinely just end up flipping a DD for at least 1,800 points of damage. In the extra, we have a bunch of cards we're never going to go into, but important ones include Heartland Draco in order to push for that final damage, same with Gaga Cowboy and Nightmare Shark. So with that, let's jump into the games and see what happens. Our first match is up against Pendulum Magicians featuring Zark, and I hope that the players who decide to make this strategy enjoy the 45 seconds they get to play it before, you know, Link Summoning shows up. We've opened... It's kind of hard to tell. In any other deck, drawing 2 copies of the field spell wouldn't be particularly good, but because there's no OPT on Trickstar Light Stage, I think we can actually go off with this. We'll use the first Light Stage to get a copy of Candina, immediately going for a Licorice off the second one, and a second Licorice off of the Candina effect. We'll Desires into a Trap and a second copy of Desires, which normally isn't very good, but this mediocre Desires combined with the just raw consistency of the deck means that we've accidentally finagled our way into lethal. We'll go ahead and do 400 apiece for the draw step draw, then flip up Trickstar Reincarnation just to get those 6 cards instead of 5. That's 1,200 plus 200 from each Licoricica, followed by a present card which does an additional 1,000 plus 200 for each Licoricica, putting our opponent at a cool 2,000 life points. This means we'll be able to destroy them if they add any card to their hand, and after they activate Terraforming, I'm going to do 18 with DD Dynamite and end the game. Our second match is up against Exodia Invoked, a deck that is certainly not tier 1, but that I certainly will be stealing in order to try and make YouTube ad money. You can see we've opened pretty well once again, but because we have Recall in hand, I'm going to try and show you what a bit more stunny style of gameplay from this deck looks like. We're going to get to start once again and be able to use our Terraforming to grab a copy of Trickstar Light Stage. After doing so, we will have every piece we need. This Candina will get us a Reincarnation. This Desires will draw us into another Light Stage and a Terraforming. We will use the Light Stage to get a copy of Lilybell, which will immediately get special summoned, and then we will return both of them to the hand in order to summon the 2 Licoricicas. This is just so our threats are protected, and we only have what we absolutely need out on the field. They draw and take an 800 damage hit for doing so, and what do you know, it's Exodia itself. I immediately banish their hand, see Exodia, and rejoice in my head. He's going to take an additional 1,400 apiece for drawing these 6 cards. They'll activate Maxi and then Ma'ad. I will negate the Ma'ad in order to do another 800 points of damage off of the Recall, and here's where the deck really shines. Every single card in their hand fetches a card from their deck and does another 800 points of damage to them. So the Meltdown will do 800, the follow-up A-lister will do 800 if he gets the Invocation. He does not, but adds the A-lister back with the Invocation afterwards, doing another 800 points of damage. Remember, it does not matter where the card came from. He'll eventually attack into our 1,600, which we will get back at end step because we're still under Maxi, and get to dome him for another 800 for doing so. Then on our turn, we have a multitude of ways to win the game. The Lilybell itself, I believe, kills it, but we'll go into Nightmare Shark as the flashiest play and beat into his face directly. Our final match is up against ABC. They've gone all the way in on Cyber Dragons just to make CDI as fast as possible. Unfortunately, we have finally hit this deck's Kryptonite, which is going second. Thankfully, we have drawn Present card, which is why we put it in the deck. They'll go first and activate Union Hanger to get an A, then of course normal summon the A, getting B, making an easy Buster Dragon next turn. We're going to go ahead and fire off this Pot of Duality, and what do we find but Contract with Dawn 1000? So I figured, let's try this out. We both take 1,000, and I draw in a Pot of Duality, grabbing a Terraforming, getting a Licoricica, and from this point we can't possibly lose. 3 Licoricicas, 2 copies of Shuffle spells. I mean, geez, we could just do whatever we want from this point. We'll bounce them all in draw step, because remember, end of last turn we were still under Duality, and then we will immediately flip the Reincarnation to do, 1,200 plus 2, 1,200 plus 2, 1,200 plus 2, putting him at, I think, a cool 28, and at this disturbance strategy, he'll concede. So, we're back with the deck. Wasn't that some fantastic gameplay? I'm actually quite concerned about this deck. It felt frighteningly consistent, and finding a combo was all but guaranteed in both the games that I played on screen and the several dozen I played off. If I were to make any changes at all, I probably would take out a Dark Bribe for a third DD Dynamite, but that's about it. I know, pending a rarity bump of Licoricica to Secret, that budget players will probably stumble on this build at some point in the near future, and as far as recommendations for them go, you can pretty easily take out the Pots of Desire for another copy of, say, Contract with Dawn 1000 and Grand Horn of Heaven, and if Recall ends up being a secret as well, Dark Bribe probably isn't the worst budget replacement either. As a final note, it's worth explaining that this archetype will be used by a main character on Vrains, and people are already comparing it to Performapal and expecting the archetype to get new support every set. I mean, if this deck is this powerful with only one pack, I can't imagine how broken it will end up. So that's that. I hope you all enjoyed a video that we'll all look at in the near future and say, God, remember when this was the most broken thing you could do with TRICKSTARs? If you like watching this show and want to see me play the decks I make on this show on stream, check out my Twitch in the description below, and if you have an idea for a certain deck or archetype for a future episode of this show, let me know in the comment section below, and I will do my best to accommodate you. Otherwise, I'll see you Sunday.